Well, welcome to The Send, and I want to thank everybody for joining us. And just a reminder, if you're watching this, to like and subscribe. If you're on YouTube, we're available on YouTube and Vimeo. We will soon be available on our Podbean channel as well, where we have the sermons for Chinchilla Church of Christ. But today we're talking about the New Age and horoscopes and fortune tellers and crystal balls and numerology. These all seem sometimes very innocent, maybe just a plaything or just a fun thing when you go to shows or fairs. Just a bit of fun. But are they really? What are they really? And do they have a place amongst Christians? Do they have a place in the church? Joining us today on The Send is Marcia Montenegro. She runs a ministry called Christian Answers for the New Age, and really want to thank you, Marcia, for joining us and for sharing your story and for talking to us a little bit about this this subject. Did I pronounce your name right? I just realized.
Yeah, that was pretty good, Marcia Montenegro. Yeah.
All right, thank you. I was going to ask you that before we hit record, but I didn't. So let us know a little bit about more about who you are and how you came to know Jesus.
Okay, sure. Thanks. And thank you for having me on your program, Eric. Well, I had gone to church when I was younger. We moved around a lot. My father was a diplomat, basically, and we lived overseas. And then we also would spend time here. So I went to different kinds of churches. My father, though, was an agnostic, and my mother was had been raised Southern Baptist, and she thought children should go to church, but she didn't do anything that would have encouraged me to go beyond going to church. She didn't. I never saw her read the Bible, and I never saw her pray, and I never heard her refer to the Bible. So that was kind of how the atmosphere in the home was. But I was very faithful in going to church after we moved back to the Washington, D.C. area, and I was going to a Baptist church. But I really didn't understand who Jesus was. I honestly didn't. I knew him from the stories in Sunday school. I knew he was called the Son of God, but that didn't mean anything to me. Basically, it just didn't have meaning for me. I just had not grasped any of the real meaning of Jesus or the gospel. So I began to really question things. I had non-Christian friends in high school, and I decided I would start my own spiritual journey. And I did. I really started in college, and then I continued after that. I did a lot of reading on Eastern religions, what's called the paranormal. So I did a lot of reading on contact with the dead. I was very interested in that for a while. Went to some seances. I ended up finally, after several years of this kind of searching and reading, deciding to take some classes. I had a class that basically was like a crash course in the New Age and introduced me to to meditation, to guided meditation, to what they call remote healing, all kinds of stuff. And it was in a guided meditation, actually, in that class, that I was introduced to what the teacher called was our spiritual master, just really a spirit guide. And then I got into Tibetan Buddhism for a while, and then in Zen Buddhism. I had done a lot of reading on Hindu ideas, and I had started to believe in reincarnation really pretty early on. I would say, several years after I got out of college, but that was one of the earliest ideas I took on as I was getting into the New Age, was reincarnation. So that was in place already when I was doing these other things. And I decided also to take some classes in psychic development, and I wanted to learn astrology. I had always liked astrology, and so I studied astrology, and I took a 7-hour exam so I could qualify for the business license because the city of Atlanta had that set up. And I became a professional astrologer, and I was entirely involved in astrology. Was very, very important to me. My friends were all like psychics and clairvoyants and tarot card readers and mediums and witches and Wiccans. And, I was, because as an astrologer, I ended up being asked by a lot of these people to do their birth chart. So that's where I was for many years until God intervened. And it is really kind of a long story. So I just want to say it was a series of things that the Lord did over several months where he gave me these impressions and drew me into a church. And then it ended up with me actually giving astrology up before I was a Christian. And then while reading the Bible, reading a portion of Matthew 8, God opened my eyes and I saw who Jesus was. And this story is on my website at christiananswersforthenewage.org. And also I've given a longer, more detailed version on some podcasts and interviews online. So if people want to search it out, they can. And so my life, of course, completely changed after I became a Christian. And eventually God led me. I had this very strong desire to tell people about the New Age and what it really was about, because what I was seeing in the church at the time was a lot of misunderstanding and a lot of inaccuracy about the New Age. Just a lot of, it was either really over exaggerated and made into this very, very extreme kind of scary conspiracy, or it was very much downplayed and dismissed as of being no possible threat at all. So, it kind of like, oh, it's just flaky people who go for that kind of thing. So I was seeing those two extremes in the church, and I didn't see much of a balanced view or accurate information. And that led eventually, several years later, to this ministry, Christian Answers for the New Age.
That's your testimony. I didn't give you this question before, but you go from Buddhism and you talk about Wicca to numerology and or astrology. I mean, and how do you define the New Age movement? Because that seems all over the place.
Yeah, yes, exactly. And I'm glad you asked the question, because I was thinking earlier, I really should define it at some point. So we were thinking along the same lines. Yeah, the way I define it is that it is a network of beliefs and practices that stem from three major areas. Gnosticism, it has a lot of Gnostic elements to it. Eastern religions, mainly Hinduism, Buddhism, and Taoism. And then the third area is the New Thought movement, which was really huge, especially in the United States in the 1800s and the early 20th century. And it created, three churches came from that: the Christian Science Church, the Unity Church, and the Church of Religious Science. But the New Thought influenced the culture of America through things like Norman Vincent Peale's book. And Think and Grow Rich was an earlier book that was very popular, that was a New Thought book. And then Norman Vincent Peale, The Power of Positive Thinking. And the main idea there is that your thoughts and words can create reality. And so the New Age adopted a lot of the ideas from New Thought, and including a lot of New Agers have the New Thought view of Jesus, which is that Jesus came to change our perceptions of reality and to change our perception of who we are, that we have the wrong idea about who we are. We actually have a divine nature. And when Jesus was a man like all other men, and when he realized he had this divine nature, he achieved Christ consciousness.
Mm.
So that idea is it's not all New Agers have it, but it's very common in the New Age. So you have a spectrum going from this Gnosticism to Eastern religions to New Thought, and you'll find people who are maybe more in one area than the other in the New Age, and then you find people who take a little bit from all three areas or from two of those three areas. So, you know, I think I was one who kind of took from all three areas.
Yeah.
And I think that's, you know, very common in the New Age.
It's interesting what you said about Christian Science. My family has a history in Christian Science, and I remember looking into that, and the notion of the Christ spirit is strong. As you said, Jesus is separate from the Christ spirit.
Yes, exactly.
And we can, according to that notion, we can access that Christ spirit and by positive thinking and all of that. And then, but the explanation I've heard from people in that movement is, yeah, but we believe in Christ, but it's a very different Christ. You know, it's a self-focused kind of force is what Christ is to them.
Yes.
And rather than Jesus as a person, as the third person of the Trinity, who is to be worshipped and praised and who saves us, it's a force that gives us things.
Yeah. The Christ spirit is another view from New Thought that's very similar to what I said about Christ consciousness, and it's the idea that there is this universal Christ spirit that descends on various people. It's descended on various spiritual teachers throughout history. This is what Edgar Cayce taught, who was very popular in this country at one time. And actually, he still has followers. I mean, he's been dead for many years, but there's the big Edgar Cayce headquarters is in Virginia Beach. It's only like 3.5 hours from where I live. And I've been there and I've taken the tour. I took the tour when I was a New Ager. And so it's still very influential. And he taught this thing about the Christ spirit, and anybody can have the Christ spirit. But you're right. The real key point is that Jesus and the Christ are distinct in the New Age.
Yeah. So I always ask this question to people or usually ask this question to people I interview, but I'll tailor it to our conversation. Just a bit of a somewhat of a role play. Say I'm a New Ager, and I also consider myself a Christian, but I'm one of those that accepts the Christ spirit, and Jesus is separate from that, and I'm clearly going down the wrong path. I've started a conversation with you. I'm on the train. Let's say I've got a minute until my station. What do you tell me?
Oh, this is called being put in the hot seat.
Yeah, yep.
A minute. Oh, wow. Okay. Well, I guess I would say what I usually urge people to do if I don't think I'm going to have another chance to talk to them is I say I really would urge you. I would ask you if you had a Bible, and most people have a Bible, whether they believe it or not. And I would say, please read one of the four Gospels and really think about who Jesus is and who he said he was.
Yeah.
So that would probably be what I would do, because with such a short amount of time, I don't think I could give them some kind of basic argument on, who Jesus really is. So I think it would be better to try to get them interested in reading for themselves. And then when you say read for yourself and see what it says, I think people, a lot of times, if they're curious or they feel challenged, might do it.
I think
if they aren't going to take that step, they aren't very receptive to hearing you anyway.
Yeah. I think that's really key. What you just said is read the Bible for finding out who Jesus is and who he says he is, because that's one of the things I see a lot when I talk to people in the New Age movement, because a lot of them say they're they accept Jesus as well.
Yes.
But what I hear from them is their definition of Jesus is not what Jesus says he is, or who Jesus says he is.
No, they definitely, no, they have a new age Jesus. And that's why you always have to ask people if they say, well, I believe in Jesus, and you're not sure, they've said other things that make you kind of doubt it. You always have to ask and say, well, then who is Jesus? Who do you think he is? And why did he come to earth?
Yeah.
Okay, that's a question I've asked people too. I asked a Wiccan that question one time. Why do you think Jesus came? And she said something along the lines of, he came, I think she said he came to show love or teach love, which is a very common answer.
Yep.
And I said, well, yes, he did. He did come to show us God's love. But I said, he also said he came for sinners. And she said, no, I didn't know he said that. And I said, well, I'll show you where he said it.
Yeah.
And I had a Bible with me, and I showed her. Now, we were at a lunch, and she had been invited to hear me give my testimony. So she was already somewhat receptive because she had been willing to come to the church. So in this case, I sort of had, something kind of in my corner already. But I think if I had just been talking to her somewhere and we had had a similar conversation, I would have asked her the same question. And if she had said he came to show love, I would have said, well, he also said he came for sinners. Let me show you where he said it. Well, she said, well, I didn't know he said that. And so, I found the passage and showed her, which is either in Matthew or Luke, and now I can't remember. And, she read it. I showed it to her and and she read it for herself. I didn't read it to her. I said, see, look here, look at verse 9 or whatever it was, and had her read it herself.
Yeah. Why is it so contrary to the biblical gospel? Why is the New Age so contrary to the biblical gospel that says we are saved by grace through faith in Jesus and not by works?
Well, the first problem is they don't believe anybody needs salvation. So right away, when you talk to a New Ager, you really can't use the regular words like salvation and sin. I don't even use sin initially. Because they've either heard these before and just rejected it, or they're just turned off by it, or they don't know what those terms mean.
Yeah.
So I don't say I don't say anything about salvation. I mean, they don't believe. What they think we need is awakening and enlightenment and liberation. So we need to awaken to our true nature and the true nature of reality, and go on the spiritual path, usually through reincarnation, where we're going to advance spiritually over many lives and gradually we will become more enlightened, and our consciousness, they always talk about having higher consciousness and things like that. So I think the approach has to be more where you talk to them about or ask questions well, do you know any perfect person who never makes a mistake? And of course they'll say no. Or are you perfect? Have you ever made a mistake? And they'll say yes. I mean, I've never met anyone that says no. And then you say, well, we have these flaws. We're flawed. We're imperfect. And then I might talk about God. God's perfect. God has absolutely no flaws at all. And so he is the standard for what is good. But we can never achieve that, even if we try. And even though you believe in reincarnation, if you were to live 1,000 lives, you still wouldn't achieve it. You just can't. You just can't, because only God is flawless and has no weakness. And so then I talk about how we have in our hearts the desire to do our own will, and that is a natural desire. We're born with that desire. We often feed it, and we even think it's a good thing that we have our own will and we want to do what we want to do.
Yeah.
But the thing is, we have to recognize, to have the relationship with God, we have to want to do his will, and that's why Jesus came. So then I can go, there's different approaches I can take with it, but and then at some point, if I'm able to talk to them, or have a dialogue with them, sometimes it's online, I might say, that we can only be healed from our weaknesses and flaws, which are called sins. They can only be healed and forgiven through Christ. I will at some point out, we have to have forgiveness, and we have to turn away from the other beliefs, because you can't just make it sound like you have to be a better person or something like that. They have to understand that there's forgiveness is needed, because they're actually going against God.
Yeah. I'll ask a question I meant to ask later, but I'll ask it now. Within Australia and America and Britain as well, I know there's some that are reaching out to the New Age movement by using New Age items and symbols and things like Christianized kind of tarot cards and crystals still and all that kind of stuff. What do you think about that? Is that
Yeah, I actually, several years ago, I mean, this is a number of years ago, there was, I think it was somebody in England who was interviewed, a Christian, who was using tarot cards to give the gospel. I think he was at a New Age fair, and he was using tarot cards to give the gospel. Okay, now and I was asked at that time what I thought of this, and my reaction then is the same as now. Is, first of all, I think it's confusing to the New Ager, because, in most cases, they know what tarot cards are and how they're used. So if somebody's there saying they're a Christian, and here I'm going to tell you about yourself or about Jesus or whatever, and they start using these cards, I think the first thing the New Ager might think is, what is the matter with this Christian? Don't they know these are tarot cards?
Yeah.
And, I think it's very spiritually confusing, because when I was in the New Age, a few times I came across Christians, like in the workplace or something, that seemed to be sympathetic to something New Age. And I don't know if they were just trying to have a rapport with me or what, but I was confused by it, because I thought, no, wait a minute, you're like in my territory now. And what are you doing here?
Yeah.
I think it can seem patronizing, confusing, plus even in an indirect way, you're giving an endorsement to that particular tool.
Yeah.
So whether it's crystals or tarot cards or whatever, you're endorsing it by trying to use it in what you think is a Christian way. So it brings spiritual confusion. I think it can be patronizing, and it gives a subtle endorsement to something that's New Age and is not of God.
Yeah.
So that's my reaction.
So why do you think the New Age movement, I mean, it seems to be gaining traction again at the moment.
Yeah.
Why do you think it is so attractive?
Well, I can tell you, here in the United States, and I know it's similar in like the UK and Europe, and I know Australia. I actually have a lot of Facebook friends and followers from Australia. I have quite a few.
Yeah, it is very prevalent here.
Yeah. So because on my ministry page on Facebook, just for people out there listening who might be on Facebook, is called Christian Answers for the New Age. And it will show me the countries people are from. It shows me the statistics. I have a high number from Australia. And I know some of the stuff going on there, and I know there's New Age there. I think the reason is that there has been, for other reasons, a downgrading of giving the gospel, giving the truth in churches. I think a lot of churches have become more worldly in an effort to draw people. They've watered down the gospel. They don't talk anymore about hell. Not that every sermon needs to be talking about going to hell, but it's like almost completely left out of the picture. and they try to make everything more comfortable for unbelievers. And so when you do that, you create a spiritual vacuum. And I think that other spiritualities will rush in.
Yeah.
And the New Age is very good at that, because the New Age is very fluid and adaptable.
Yeah.
It's not real fixed. It has a certain core ideas that it keeps, but those ideas can be presented in a different way. They can be packaged differently. Different terms can be used, and the New Age often uses terms that are familiar or seem familiar, but that has another meaning. So the deception can be very, very subtle.
Yeah.
And then, of course, sometimes it will try to sound Christian. So, I think that because there's a spiritual void, the New Age, other things rush into, like Buddhism also is getting made a lot of advances in this country. But the New Age in particular has mainstreamed because it can appear to be quote unquote normal. And the other thing is that the New Age always appears positive and helpful and spiritual. And that's usually what people are looking for. And often they think if something is positive and helpful, it is spiritual. So, people don't understand that the New Age is actually rooted in a very deep darkness.
Yeah.
And its appearance of being helpful and positive is just a mask.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, I guess, like you said about the not speaking about judgment and hell, it goes back to what you said before about if you ask somebody who Jesus is or why he came, they'll say, well, because, he came to bring love. But they don't understand that John 13 version of love, when Jesus says, love one another. That's why I came. You should love one another, but love one another as I have loved you. And you can't understand that unless you understand how he saved us on the cross from death and judgment and God's wrath. You can't possibly understand what he meant by that unless you understand how the punishment for our sins. And
right. Well, one thing I've realized that I never understood as a New Ager, and I keep it in mind now, is that there's no understanding at all of the righteousness of God. Who God is. That concept is completely alien in the New Age. And I did not really understand. I didn't understand it till after I became a Christian. And actually took me a while. It took me a while to understand it. It took me a while to understand what evil was. I didn't even understand what evil was, because in the New Age, you don't have the concept of evil. You don't have the concept of righteousness, and you don't have the concept of evil. You just have the concept of what's positive and everything's positive or negative. And so you don't have any absolutes. And you're kind of in this gray world where there aren't any absolutes and any clear-cut boundaries or corners or anything. And so all of a sudden, when the light comes on and you become a Christian and you see things, it actually takes a while. It's like I've always heard that people who are blind but are able to have an operation to reverse it, which is in some cases happens, that it takes them a while until they can actually use their eyes and see, because they're not used to seeing. And it's almost like that when you come out of the New Age. I think a lot of Christians should keep that in mind. If they know new Christians out of the New Age, they're still learning and understanding who God is.
Well, how do you see, you mentioned this before, but how do you see the New Age infiltrating the church? I'll give you a little bit of my story. I was in one of the largest denominations in the US, and I remember we were at a pastor's retreat. So I was a student pastor at the time, and we did a labyrinth, and that's quite popular in a lot of mainstream churches at the moment. But before we went in, the woman leading the prayer time in the labyrinth had a Buddhist, what do they call those bowls where you
those bowls that they hit on the side, make the noise.
Yeah, so she did that
Kidney bowls.
and had
Yeah.
some incense, and then
Oh my goodness.
she did a prayer, but in the prayer she said, well, we're praying to Brother Moon and Sister Stars, and I had some experience with New Age, and had some friends that were involved in Wicca in high school and early uni, and it seemed like that, and that was kind of the last straw for me in that denomination.
Yeah,
But
that sounds pretty bad
oh
doing that
yeah, yeah,
in
and
a
that's one
Christian
of the
church.
largest denominations in the States. So
Wow. Wow.
where do you see the New Age infiltrating the church?
Yeah, well, I think what you described is kind of one of the more obvious
Hmm.
obvious ways, because of course a lot of Christians, just like you were, would be upset by that,
Yeah.
because there's nothing related to God or Christ in what she was saying and
Hmm.
doing. But I do think that there are more subtle ways now. I have been following for several years what I call contemplative spirituality. I
Yeah.
don't know if anybody else has used that term. As far as I know, I'm the only person who's used it. I could be wrong, but that's what I say.
Hmm.
Contemplative spirituality, which is it involves a set of practices that have names like contemplative prayer or listening prayer, and other terms. They use this practice that comes from the Roman Catholic Church, actually from medieval times, Lectio Divina.
Yeah.
But I think it has been, in many cases, redefined and or redone. I think it might be. I'm not sure that it's the same as it was way back when,
Yeah.
but I know how it's being taught now.
Hmm.
And these practices are very inward oriented.
Yeah.
And very subjective, and they seem designed to conjure up an experience.
Yeah.
So this is how they'll often present it. They'll present it by saying, do you feel like you aren't close to God, or do you feel that God isn't around? Do you feel really too caught up in the busyness of life, and you feel like you need to sit down and be with God or listen to God? And then they'll present their method. And the thing is that these methods, first of all, often are based on Eastern religions.
Hmm.
The centering prayer movement here, which was started by 3 Trappist monks, and I have an article on my website on one of them, Thomas Keating, because I went and heard him in person in 2005, and then I had a personal one-on-one conversation with him for about 10 or 15 minutes.
Yeah.
So, but I had followed that whole movement there. And at first it was mainly seemed to be in the Catholic circles, but then it started coming into the non-Catholic churches.
Yeah.
And now it's really big. Now we have a lot of churches have what they call spiritual directors.
Mm-hmm.
And this is actually something from medieval monasticism. The spiritual directors were like these guides for the monks who were there to help guide them to hear the Holy Spirit and things like that. They were like spiritual, guidance counselors, maybe.
Yeah.
And so that's become very popular now. And these people are into their mindset is, to me, is a mindset alien to the Bible, because it's very much centered on experiences.
Yeah.
And they will use scripture or they'll try to support their teaching and ideas with scripture. And what I say, because so far this is true, and if it's ever not true, I'll say so, but so far every single scripture I've seen to support these practices, every single one has been taken out of context or misinterpreted. I have looked at all of them. I really, as far as I know, I haven't missed any, because I've looked up a lot of scriptures and I've read the passages, and they're taken out of context.
Yeah.
Like they say, you have to be quiet and still to hear God or to be God. And then the most famous one is Psalm 46:10, be still and know that I am God, which actually that language is only in the King James. If you look in other versions, like the New American Standard will say cease striving.
Yeah.
And if you look at the psalm itself, which is actually very short, it's actually God saying, telling those who are fighting against Israel to stop their fighting, and those Israel, his people, should trust him. And the whole psalm is really kind of a rebuke.
Yeah.
And some commentator, I don't know if it was Charles Spurgeon or somebody, said basically God's saying, shut up and listen to me.
Yeah.
When he says, be still, know that I'm God, that's kind of what he's saying. So, it has nothing to do with sitting still, like and doing an Eastern meditation. And I did Buddhist meditation for many years.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing when they describe the techniques and the steps on doing these things, they're alike. They're very much like what I did for Eastern meditation.
That's interesting. You say techniques and steps. That's been what I've noticed within New Age Christianity. Is you get, there's a lot of books out there on techniques and steps and I think about Paul, who had that experience with God on the road to Emmaus, the road to Damascus, and he wasn't doing any techniques or steps. The disciples on the road to Emmaus had that experience with Jesus, and they weren't doing any techniques or steps. Mary,
yes. Right.
If he's going to talk to you, he's going to talk to you.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. And I say, and of course, then you can get into the whole issue, which I try to avoid. Does God still speak to people today? And then you get into these other issues that are secondary issues. And I try to avoid that because what I try to point out is, God is not going to have any trouble, just hypothetically, whether you think God's going to speak to you or not. If he wants to speak to you, he's not going to have any problem. It's not like you're going to be so busy that you're not going to hear him.
Yeah, well, that's. I
had the TV on too loud, so I didn't hear God.
Yeah.
It's like God has no problem being able to communicate when he wants to whoever he wants to communicate. Yeah. And also, I also want to just say, in case people wonder, because sometimes this happens, they think I'm speaking against having experiences, and I'm not. There's nothing wrong with having an experience of feeling God is close or feeling the Holy Spirit, but it should be the outcome of just your relationship with the Lord, or maybe an outcome of worship or prayer or reading scripture. And when it's a natural outcome of those normal practices we do as Christians, then that, I'm not saying there's something wrong with that. It's when you try to bring on an experience, you're trying to make it happen. Yeah.
I mean, this is the same God that spoke everything into existence.
Yes.
if he wants to be heard, he's going to be heard.
Yeah, exactly.
And it can be
recorded.
I know for my sake, it can be, when I was involved in that a bit, it can be really quite discouraging, because you see other people and they're talking about these experiences. I know I used to go to a place that had Teze worship. And by the way, I should say this, in talking about my experience before, I didn't participate in that labyrinth walk after that. I walked away from that because I could see how unscriptural that was. But you hear those things like Lectio Divina. My first experience with Lectio Divina was actually really good. What happened was, we read the text and then we were kind of had a few questions. What does it say about Jesus? What is it saying to you about God? That was good. That's how we should read the text. Right. The next time I heard Lectio Divina, it was, what colors do you sense?
Oh my goodness.
What what presence do you feel? Well, what presence should I feel? That there
Yeah.
shouldn't be an
Oh,
option there. And
no.
but
Oh, no.
you do these things and you expect some kind of experience, like you
Yeah.
said. And
Yeah.
then when you don't have that experience, it's really discouraging. And what you're told
Yes.
is, well, you need to do the steps better. You need
Yeah.
to do the
Yeah.
processes better.
Practice more. Just keep doing it. Just
Yeah.
keep doing it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the Lectio Divina that I've come across, they tell you, you read the passage and then you read it again, and you notice if a word or phrase
Yeah.
jumps out at you.
Yeah.
And then you're supposed to take that word or phrase, and that kind of becomes the word or phrase you either meditate on, or you sit there and think about it, or repeat it in your mind over and over again. And I'm thinking, this is not how we're supposed to read scripture. We don't see what word jumping. I mean, yeah, sometimes you're reading something and it's the meaning really, it really hits you like it never hit you before. But this is like looking for some kind of little technique. And, I don't think when I'm reading now what word is jumping out at me, I'm reading it for the meaning of the text in the context, in the context of the whole passage. What's coming before. If I look up a passage, I always look to see what's before and what's after.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you can, miss something.
Yeah.
So, but they don't teach it to read in context, and they don't teach to compare scripture to scripture.
Yeah.
So, it's very subjective. It's very subjective kind of thing.
Last couple questions here, but can a Christian see a psychic or use things like horoscopes?
Yeah, no, okay, yeah, let me answer that. Psychics, like all people who do things like that, tarot card readers, astrologers, anyone, a medium who claims to contact the dead, all of those people have spirit guides. And actually, if you're talking to someone like that and they're giving you information, a lot of that information is probably coming from their spirit guide. And a spirit guide is a fallen angel. That's what I call them. They're fallen angels. So, I mean, I had spirit guides, so I know this. And my friends who were astrologers had spirit guides. And, in the psychic development class, we talked about our spirit guides. And the teacher talked about, and this is a very common thing in the New Age. And with anybody in these practices. So you were actually sitting there, you're basically saying to God, hey, I'm okay getting advice from a fallen angel. Bring it on. I'm ready for it, and you are going to be very sorry, let me tell you, because the psychic will likely tell you things that are true, and you will be impressed. It will be meaningful to you, and you will think you're being helped, and you'll go back. I've talked to Christians this has happened to. They've gone out of desperation when they're usually, having some kind of crises or something, and they'll go to a psychic or a medium or an astrologer. Now, as far as horoscopes go, so no, it's not okay. You should never go to a psychic for a reading, definitely. Don't be afraid of these people. In other words, if you happen to meet one and you find out this person is a psychic, don't be afraid. You don't have to run away. You can talk to them. But don't ask them to do a reading for you. Now, the astrology horoscopes, of course, is based on astrology, and that's based on a belief that the planets actually have a meaning in your life, and their position has a meaning in your life. And this is looking to creation instead of the creator. This is trying to get messages from creation. God's already given us his message in his word. We already have that. And trying to look for it in creation, this is like you think that, it's the same as palm reading. You think that the lines on your hand have meaning. That's the same kind of thing. It's divination as astrology. Or that's like thinking the cracks in the sidewalk have a message for you. There's nothing. No, they don't have a message for you. And the stars don't have a message for you, except that they glorify the creator, and we can look at them for astronomical reasons, or for, I know people who, sailors before modern times, they would guide their ship, through the sea based on the position of stars. that helped orient them where they were. They knew where to go. So it's used for direction, but that's being used in a very concrete, legitimate scientific fashion.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
anything beyond that, where you think there's some kind of meaning for your life, you've crossed the line there, and you've started to look to creation.
That's interesting. You mentioned divination, because I mean that's the one biblical command in Deuteronomy, is to have nothing to do with divination. It lists divination, and everything that you mentioned about the New Age seems to be divination, which is drawing God out by your own efforts.
By your own efforts, yeah.
All those processes you talked about with the kind of New Agey stuff within the church, and the contemplative stuff. It's all about drawing God out, making him do something because of what you do. And you can see, knowing the nature of God in the Bible, you can see why God would have a problem with that.
Yes, exactly.
Of people thinking that they can control him, and make him come out to them. And that's just not the nature of the God of the Bible at all.
No, you're right. It is a big presumption on the part of people who do these things, that you're going to somehow get God to react to this.
Yeah. What is the scope of your organization, Christian Answers for the New Age?
Well, it's a ministry that involves research. So a lot of reading, writing. I have 2 books and a lot of articles that have been published, and chapters in some books. And I have a lot of articles on my website, and speaking ministry. So I've given talks in different churches and at conferences, women's retreats, of course, like things like this, an interview, podcasts. And it's mainly, there's 2 main goals or purposes of this ministry. The first one is to educate Christians on what the New Age is, so they can be more discerning and be more prepared to witness to people in the New Age. And the second one is to reach out to people in the New Age and the occult, to share Christ with them. So those are the 2 main goals, but it's research, writing, and speaking.
Yeah. Well, we will put your website on the bottom of this in the editing. Great. And so people can go on there, learn a little bit more, and how to support your ministry. But we really want to thank you for joining us today. This is a huge topic at the moment, and well, it always has been a huge topic. The devil's deception has been around for a very long time. And so we really want to thank you for joining us here in Australia. And I really want to encourage people, again, if you watch this, hit the like button if you're on YouTube. I think you can do that on Vimeo too, but subscribe if you're on YouTube as well. And like I said, we'll get this up on Podbean hopefully in the next few weeks for those who just want to listen. And please check out Christian Answers for the New Age. And again, thank you, Marcia, for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.